As I'm sure many of you guys have as well, the last 24 to 48 hours, I've just been reflecting on that Mohamed Salah interview, trying to understand it. And I personally think, like Jamie Carragher said, I do think just that aspect. I don't agree with everything Kara said, but I do think him speaking to the media is not a product of just the 3 games being benched. For me, it's a bigger thing over the whole season. And when he said, this is a quote from his interview, which I think really stands out. He said, I got a lot of promises in the summer, and so far I'm on the bench for 3 games, so I can't say they kept the promises. For me, the deep down thing beyond just getting benched, because the reality is, I checked the stats, he's our 5th most used player this season. So to say he hasn't been trusted this season is just factually wrong when he's been one of our most used players when you look at the whole season. For me, the bigger thing is that must really hurt him, hurt his ego. And he has a right to have an ego. What makes him such a great player? People have this like negative connotation with an ego, but that's what makes him such a great player. Being a main man at a football club for that many years is a difficult thing, and he's delivered. And that's why he's on the Mount Rushmore with Stevie G. That's saying a lot. But like I said, I think what really is hurting him is the fact that he's no longer the main man. And what I mean by that is over the years, especially last season, I think our system suited him. Our system was built for him to get the goals in the final third. And that's because of his ability. That's giving him all the credit. But the reality is that means the whole rest of the team has to sacrifice, has to work in unity for that final end product to work. You get what I'm saying? So that was last season. But then beyond that, under the Klopp years, for those of you that will watch Sadio Mane's interview with Rio Ferdinand, he said that during the Klopp years, the team understood that in the final third, the main man to get the golden boots was going to be Mohamed Salah. And therefore, he had to defend more than Mo. He had to track back. And that was just an understanding within the team. Same, even more so, Bobby Firmino. We know how he's the definition of a selfless player. He led the press. But going back to that system under Klopp and our system last season, everything went through him, funneled through him. And he was the main man. And I think with the signings we've made this summer, especially in Florian Wirtz, Alexander Isak, and Hugo Ekitike, when you look at their heat maps at Liverpool so far, they much prefer operating from the left-hand side. So that leaves Mo more isolated on the right-hand side. And to add on to that, the fact that Trent also left this summer makes it a lot more difficult for Mo. And this is where I have sympathy for him. I understand the frustration. He had a world-class creator behind him who would play him balls constantly in Trent, who's left. And of course, you're going to feel that. You're going to miss that. And our right back situation obviously has not been stable at all, given Conor Bradley's been injured, Frimpong's been injured. We've had to try Sobo in there, Curtis. We've had to try so many different solutions there, and that makes it harder for him on the right-hand side. But like I said, where I think his biggest frustration lies is the fact that when he signed that contract, the 2-year extension, that was before we made our summer signings. And the summer signings, now, for example, when you bring in someone like £125 million Alexander Isak, that's not for him to be a false nine, for him to create space for Mo, and whenever he gets the space in key situations, for him to pass it to Mo. We know that's not a reality. You don't bring in a player like Alexander Isak just to create space and, like I said, create for Mohamed Salah. That's just not the case. You know what I mean? So he's not going to be the only main man anymore with the way we recruited this summer. And where I think he can understand, where I can understand the broken promises is I think it's kind of related to that. And his ego is hurt because he's not the main guy in the team anymore because of those new signings. And that's where I think that frustration lies, because I've been trying to understand the why as to why this would happen, especially in this moment when we need leadership more than ever. And that's where, I have sympathy for him, but I'm also disappointed because at the same time, it's like that's the reality of our situation now. And you're still the highest paid player in the team, but also in the history of Liverpool Football Club. So to say that the club doesn't respect you, I don't think is quite fair either, because he is the most paid player and we wanted to extend him, So it's just a difficult situation now to see how he fits in. But I think more than ever, we need him to lead for the team as well, because right now we're in such a crisis situation where I can understand everybody's frustration. And this is where it's also on Slot. First of all, he should have dealt the situation behind the scenes. But also, it's not right that someone like Cody Gakpo is starting week in, week out when we have Chiesa on the bench who plays in the same position, who has looked brighter. That's not right, right? The some of the personal choices of Arne Slot, I agree with that. But right now, because we are in a crisis situation, I can't look at individual selections in the team. We need to look at the bigger picture. We need to look at the bigger picture and what's best for the team. And I know that many Liverpool fans out there are Arne Slot out, and I can understand that. But the reason why the board, I think, has decided to stick with Arne Slot is because they've also looked at options available for managers in the market right now, and there's nothing better. And so they're sticking with Arne Slot because they never think short term. We're not a Man United. We're not a Chelsea, thankfully. We never think in short term in the way we sack managers. It has to be long-term thinking. So I think the only way we let Slot go is if we find another manager, maybe like a Xabi Alonso, where we say, yep, let's build for the future with him. But that's not the case right now. It's not. You know what I mean? And so right now we're in a situation where we have to back the manager. That's our reality. And if we're just being more negative, I just don't see how that helps the team. I don't. When we're supposed to be supporting this team. You know what I mean? And that's where I think Salah has to step up in his leadership. Even though, like I said, I have sympathy for him and I understand the frustration. What matters most right now is the team and us sticking together, because nobody is doing that well except Sobo and who else is doing well? I guess you could say Alisson, but very few players are actually doing. Ekitike has done very well this season. Very few players are doing well. But like Sobo said, even him who's playing the best this season said we need to look at ourselves in the mirror and look at how we can improve. And when Salah gave his interview, there was no accountability. You know, like if he had said, for example, this season, I don't think I've been good enough, but I feel like in the last 3 games, if Slot had played me more, I could have had an impact. I would totally understand that. But he didn't take accountability for how he's played this season. And like I mentioned before, there's many reasons why he hasn't been at the levels, and that's also the system not suiting for him. But that goes back to also being grateful for the team also sacrificing for him and him delivering the goods. Of course, he was world class in that, but also it's always been a team effort. And Liverpool, more than any other football club, like this is where I think Liverpool and Real Madrid, for example, are polar opposites. Liverpool has always been about the team working for one another, and not this thing of saying like this like star power, which you see kind of at Real Madrid. For me, what I found so beautiful at Liverpool Football Club is it's like all these players that were giving it absolutely everything for the team. And it didn't feel like we had like one star. It felt like as a team under Klopp, we always fought together. And that's what was so special. And it felt like there was that culture of no individual is greater than the team, because the whole team sacrifices for the end result of trying to win football games and win trophies at the end of the season. And that's as a collective. That's never as an individual, you know? And that's why, like I said, I've just been trying to understand, because I have so much love for Mo. I have so much love for this team, but more than anything, I have so much love for this football club, you know? And my dream is for Salah and for Slot to make up and for Salah to stay, because he's a world-class player. He's one of our greatest ever players. I have so many Salah shirts in the back. I love him to bits. But like I said, there has to be this mental change where it's all about the team, especially in moments of crisis, especially moments in crisis, because that's when we need to stick together, because it's harder than ever mentally as a unit to keep going, especially when you play every single 3 days where the pressure is on the next game, you know? And that's where I really, really hope, like I said, that Slot and Salah make up, because he is just one of our most legendary players. And even if they don't, for me, it will never impact his legacy. Salah's legacy will always remain intact as one of Liverpool's greatest ever players. And that's saying something, because bro, I could bring out some of the football shirts I have here with the likes of John Barnes. I have an Ian Rush one. I have a Fowler one. I have every player imaginable. There's been some greats. And like I said, Salah is on the Mount Rushmore of that. And even if he leaves in January, even if Brighton is his last game, that legacy for me won't change one bit. Obviously, I hope that's not the case. My dream is for him to stay because you want world-class players at your football club, but there has to be this mentality of the team. Even if we're all frustrated about personnel, trust me, I want Chiesa to be starting more. Trust me, there's certain other players that I think should be getting more playing time. But when you're in a crisis situation, it's more important than ever to stick together as a team. And for me, that's kind of the leadership that I want to see come out. You know what I mean? And this is where, like, again, I think nuance is so important because I literally told you guys where I think Salah's frustration lies. But at the same time, this is our reality now. You know what I mean? It's our reality that we've brought in these star players in the summer and that they will want to be the main men in certain moments. You know what I mean? Because they know they have the quality. Florian Wirtz is one of the greatest talents in the world that could basically start for any team. We brought him in. We brought in Alexander Isak, who could probably start for almost any side in the world too. You know, so, and Ekitike is proving to be our best signing too, so not to mention him, you know. But it's definitely become a difficult situation to deal with because of all these different factors. You know what I mean? But like I said, we will learn obviously a lot this week because unfortunately this is the last week until Salah goes off to AFCON. Brighton this weekend is going to be his last game before he goes away on international duty. And I think we'll learn a lot about what happens in the future. You know, whether he decides he wants to leave in January, whether the club decides he goes in January, we'll have to wait and see. But I think a lot of it hinders on. My main point of this whole video is him accepting that he's not the main guy anymore because we have Alexander Isak, because we have Hugo Ekitike, because we have Florian Wirtz. And that's just the way things have developed with our recruitment, you know, naturally in that way. And I understand how difficult that must be for him because, like I said, he's been the main man that we funnel through all of these years. And he delivered on that. You know what I mean? Before any Salah lovers, the biggest Salah lovers attack me, just listen to what I've said in this video where I have nothing but love for him. And for me, his legacy will never change. And my dream is for him to stay. But like I said, this is just the reality of our team right now. The fact that there are these other main guys now here and that they're much younger and that we have to build a future around them because we have to think for the long term. They've signed 5-6 year deals, the three players I mentioned. So yeah, guys, let me know what you think of this why that theory, I guess you could say, that I've been thinking about because I've been reflecting a lot and I've been hurt because usually we don't have this kind of drama in the public. That's the opposite of Liverpool. But yeah, I just hope it all gets resolved and that we could just focus on the football again because that's all I want. And that's usually what Liverpool is so good at all these years, just focusing on the football and getting results. And I think we can get back on track with that. So thank you guys as always for your support on the videos. I appreciate you guys taking the time. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and I will see you in the next one. You'll never walk alone. Ciao, guys.